We can understand the brain by thinking of it as a big, giant city with a massive infrastructure of highways. And all these highways are functioning well until there's a jam, until there's some kind of block. And this is what happens in the brain. These blocks precede the depression, the dementia, the disease. We used to quite confidently feel that simply serotonin and norepinephrine were the culprits. But we've recently started to look deeper, and the scientific community has found through PET scans and so on that it is actually the space in between these synapses, these connections of the brain, that we're seeing trouble arise. And if we can get into those connections early and make them healthy connections, we can do what we thought was impossible just 10 years ago. Most of the world still feels that if you get a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, you feel like it's a life sentence. You feel like it's something that you're prone to for the rest of your life, which is just not the case at all. It is the belief in the thought, and a belief is just a thought that we rehearse over and over and over again. And once it becomes a belief, it really does become matter. So it's mind over matter still. We can see that depression is experienced in certain parts of the brain. And if we want to cure or heal that depression, we need to shift out of those parts of the brain. Something that people think might be impossible, but it's not at all impossible. And we can do these shifts, these paradigm shifts as we call them, through simple exercises like meditation, contemplative practice, stillness, and definitely exercise. There's nothing quite like a walking meditation to stimulate coordination in the brain. And if we get enough exercise stimulation, positive coordination, balance becomes a real aspect in the brain. And we can see shifts from depression to neutral states, if not at sometimes elevated states. So this is the power of the mind, and we need to start looking at the mind as a muscle. We need to stop identifying with the mind as who we are, because it's certainly not who we are. It's a muscle. It runs a program, and it is there to help you learn. It is there to help you keep safe. And eventually, once all the brain's needs are met, it's there to help you create, grow, contribute, and even do extraordinary things. So at first, the brain and the body are very five sensory by nature. We only have the five senses of sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. And it feeds on those and uses those for survival, of course, for our first 7-8 years. And then so we go on. But what we discover is that when we're ready, we unlock the bounds of the mind and we move from the sensory to the multisensory, which is experiencing multiple senses at one time. And then we can actually move into the extrasensory realm, where we can experience intuition, intent, the power of intention, which is very powerful. And of course, everything that comes with setting intention, imagination, and so on. And this is how we can create a paradigm shift from survival to Thrive Mind. It is a completely different part of the brain that leads to a completely different life for each of us. So we need to know how important brain function, brain activity is, brain health, and we need to know how greatly we can influence these functions and activities. So we go from powerlessness to regaining a sense of power as we start to nurture and control what we thought was out of our control, which is a mind having 87,000 thoughts a day. We start to regain control of the mind. We start to regain power, meaning action, over our body, hearts, and brains when we practice healthy brain function. For most of us, it's not that depression or anxiety, even borderline personality disorder, for example, bipolar. All of these things are proving to be treatable, significantly so, regardless of what anyone says. Many brain scans are actually showing that people who have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder actually don't have the disease at all. They don't have the disorder. They have discovered that they have a brain injury from a fall out of a tree or a bicycle 10 years earlier. And when we start treating the brain function for the fault, for the damage that occurred, the bipolar-like symptoms disappear. So often today, far often, we're treating the cause very little, and we're looking just at the effects. And in fact, when it comes to the brain, we've got to understand that psychiatry is one of the only practices out there who don't look at all. They don't look at the brain. They diagnose without looking at the brain. You're interviewed and questioned, and symptoms are sought. So when we look at brain scans, when we look at PET scans, we start to see brain function for what it really is. Instead of guessing, instead of looking at symptoms, which are the effects of a cause that could be something completely different. So there's no end to the amount of people who have had Lyme's disease, tick bite fevers. They've had an incident where they fell off their bike, where they've played football or baseball and have had a bump to the head. And these things are being treated as depression, for argument's sake. We need to be far more specific, realizing that in between these connections, there is a space that we can access human potential like we've never accessed it before. We can certainly do what hundreds of thousands of people have done, which is cure depression, prevent brain disease disorders. They've kept that traffic in their city, that busy city of the brain, they've kept that traffic flowing, or they've started the flow of traffic again by taking positive action. The adult hippocampus, for example, makes 700 new neurons every single day. And that's a lot of change in the brain. So where focus goes, energy flows. And if we can focus and direct those neurons and create learning can also double the amount of neurons in the brain when we're learning something. Then we can create effects from the cause that we're intending, which is happiness, bliss, peacefulness, and joy, which is healing, transformation, which is overcoming disease. So we're really seeing normal people do non-normative things, and it's a wonderful time to be treating depression, anxiety, trauma, and so on. When we see people take charge and start to regain power and control over the efficacy of their own mind, which they disidentify from, and then become a new person. And I always say you need to lose your personality, create a new one. Personalities that we create are created from thoughts, feelings, perceptions, attitudes, traits, and all the events and circumstances in our lives, all combined. And when we see that story of who we thought we were is not who we think we really are today, we can use everything from our neurons to our blood flow, to sleep, to exercise, to meditation, all of these things to make significant changes to the personality, to the brain function, to the body, heart, and mind. We understand that being in a car accident can give you panic attacks for the rest of your life unless you're not aware of the cause. And often, of course, you're going to be treated for panic and anxiety rather than for the brain injury. In a car accident, we're going to say, listen, this is not worth taking a brain scan of. This is clearly PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And then we spend the next few years going down depressed, anxious, and stressed. And there's no need to do that. We need to look effectively at the cause and stop treating these symptoms. We treat these symptoms with 300 million Prozac scripts a year or more. And the outcome is a mental health crisis. It's just not working at all. We've got to take health, mental health back through positive changes to body, heart, and mind that we ourselves can make. So learn how to work your brain. It's not brain surgery. It's not rocket science anymore. That if you think positive thoughts, it will have a certain effect on your brain, which will have a certain effect on your body, which houses your emotions. So your emotions will change whether you're positive or negative in thought. And that's power. So if somebody can have negative thinking, develop depression, and have a painful life of suffering emotionally, surely the adverse is also true. That someone who starts taking command and charge of their bodies, hearts, and minds can actually have an influence that is positive on every single neuron, all of these 700 new neurons that we make every day, and so on and so forth, to create the life that they really want, this time on purpose, not accidentally, not with a survival mind, not with a body and a nervous system that is made to keep you alive, to give you the depression and anxiety so that you don't harm yourself further. But again, even the brain starts treating the body for something that does not exist. And it's all fear-based. We jump to a post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis in 15 minutes. This is psychiatry as we're experiencing it today. Not that it's all bad, but the point is, if we want the healing ourselves, we've got to take the extra steps to look at our own human potential, to look at cause and effect, and to look at how we can get into cause effect ourselves. Well, we found that the holistic community has been right all along, and doctors are now speaking the same language. So science and spirituality are really becoming one when it comes to human health. You can cause effect. You can take your power back by sleeping well. It is 7 or 8 hours a day. Just a few years ago, everyone was propagating sleeping for 2 or 3 hours in lieu of success, in lieu of making money. And that was just a crazy idea that didn't work. There's no balance there. So we can sleep well. A big one is changing our diet. You can do that with supplements and make sure you have a good balance, or you can eat well. And there's enough out there on the internet to make sure that you do. The way you eat is going to affect your body, heart, and mind far more than your genes ever will. People saying that I am predisposed to depression or alcoholism or whatever it's going to be must realize that that predisposition can be turned on and off by the brain. So yes, starting your day right, sleeping well, getting a balanced Mediterranean diet, for example, taking supplements, using affirmations. Today, my intent is to live well, healthy and strong, take command of my own faculties, dormant and otherwise, and create the person I want to be, far beyond the confines and structures of my personality. We can use gratitude practices to get out of judgment mind, to get out of that survival brain. Practicing gratitude like we would practice the piano or the guitar really does bring significant gains that we can measure on a scan. So we can let food love us back to health, because love really is the answer to survival, which is all based in fear, forget everything and run mentality. We can pray at bedtime and have a significant impact on our sleep patterns. And in turn, everything is connected. It's all zeros and ones at the end of the day. It is all cause and effect. It is all binary systems of pause and go, of left brain and right brain, of sleep and wakeful states, and on we can go. So when you get in there, you can really take your power back, and in so doing, you can heal your life regardless of what anyone tells you. Prozac and the like are not going to heal you. they're going to mask the underlying effects of what has caused you to become depressed or anxious or stressed as a normative state. Taking brain action is far, far better and more effective than taking medicine, in my opinion. So remember that. Medicine can not get you from A to B. Rather, it can just be the launch plate to get you off of A. But generally, it's not going to get you to B, which is happiness, joy, bliss, experiencing a sense of calm and happiness and connection with the universe, with other people, and even with yourself. So cleaning the house, playing games that require coordination, balance, some kind of tactfulness, all of these things will make you live longer. We know that muscle and protein are the best foods for the brain. So right there, that's something that you can use to completely heal your life and rewire your reality. You can train your nervous system and you can train your brain. The brain is completely predisposed to addiction. It's addictive by nature. And for me, the only addiction, which they called the brain disease in 2013, I think they were right. The addiction is being addicted to our thoughts. And then when we believe those thoughts, we start to suffer. When we question those thoughts, when we re-look at, which is contemplation, re-looking at reality rather than our perceptions, exactly the way reality is, we start to heal. So we move from the world being a malevolent, violent, and depressive place through to the world being a safe, kind, creative space. And we can do that. That's a massive, massive, major shift with two polar opposites right there. So some people are living lives of quiet desperation, while others are living lives of creativity and happiness. Choose creativity and happiness and practice it through all the techniques that we're sharing with you now. If you're stuck, you get yourself into a program and reprogram your mind. You need new software if you've been stuck for a couple of years, couple of decades, which is the norm today. It's what everybody tells me. I had a divorce. I had a death 5 years ago. I have not been the same since. This is the stuckness. It is the nature of a brain that is frozen. And it's frozen neurobiologically until we start to take action and move from fearful, frightened parts of our brain and our personality. We then move to more loving parts of our brain, located on the completely opposite side, where gratitude and love and belonging reside. So getting there is the journey back home. That's what we're calling it these days. It's the journey back to an authentic, sacred self without the beliefs that you are somehow tainted darkly, that you're suffering, that you have a shadow that you can't get rid of. Absolute nonsense. All things are possible. And when we change where we focus, we change where all our energy goes. From the back doldrums of the dungeons of our minds through to the front, the light side, the Pinocchio, as Pinocchio was. The pineal gland is in the front, and occhio meaning eye. And all of these stories were of how he himself emerged from doing silly things every day and getting swallowed by whales and not listening to adults, and how he moved from the back to the front, vowing each time, of course, that he would never do these foolish things again. But of course he did. So that's the story of our power to change, and it's been around forever, in the East, in the West, in the North and the South. Wherever we look, all the prophets and the sages have told us, be still and know. Self-love is brain love. You can be 10 or 20 pounds overweight and you're not going to be loving your brain at all. It's going to age you by 10 years, sometimes more. So just looking after your weight is something that's going to have to be dealt with through mindfulness, through consciousness, through awareness. And we're incredibly good at personal transformation. When we know why to do it, we can bear anyhow, as Friedrich Nietzsche used to say. So all we need is a process, and we call this process the paradigm shift, literally something you can see on a brain scan, something that people can no longer deny anymore. So the power really is in our hands. All we need is the process to recreate the person. All we need is to understand the process, the roadmap, to unblock those highways and recreate whenever we want to, whenever we're ready, at 40, 50, 60, wherever it's going to be, to recreate our personal realities through removing the masks of codependence, anxiety, through perfectionism and all the things and traits that we've developed to keep us safe. When we unmask ourselves, we're set free. We become unlimited, unbounded. And really, the sky is the limit. Self-love is brain love. And that's where we start. The paradigm process is a program that we use, and it's a 10-step program, and it starts with letting go of control. That need to control is our need to stay the same, which results in 10 years of depression, anxiety, of being lost and stuck in PTSD. We've got to understand that when we let go of control and say, all right, I've had enough, when I understand that my brain is running amok, when I become conscious, I put down control. The more I try to control the mind without the proper tools, the worse it's going to become, the faster the thoughts are going to run. So I let go on one side, which is right and left hemispheres. I let go of control and I let it be. And I start to disidentify. I am not my personality. I am not even my environment or my personal reality. Rather, I am what is behind my thoughts. I am the observer of these thoughts. Rather, I'm the creator of my own healing. I am the one who is capable of transformation. So, do not be conformed to your mind was written in the Bible, and how true it is. But be transformed by the renewal of your mind. So there we go. This is nothing new. We're just seeing it on brain scans. A new mind, a transformed mind, is practiced through intention. It is when we release control, which is all based in fear, all types of fear, which is a real primary emotion. We start to take a paradigm shift over to love. Love is the most powerful emotion of all. You love your body, you love your heart, you love your brain, you're going to have a good life. When we don't love our body, hearts, and brains, we need to become conscious that we're not doing it. Most of us are friendlier, we're kinder to strangers than we are to ourselves. We just don't know it, we're just not aware. So awareness is really key, mindfulness, and practicing our tools. We really can create anything we want once we realize that there's a mask that we can lift and remove. We're not the story of the past. Even if I have bipolar or whatever it's going to be today, it might be something different. And I might need to look at a scan to check it out. Why not? There is no limit to healing and life transformation today. We have a pharmacy inside of us, no pharmaceutical company required, that is capable of perfectly dosing, perfectly balancing, perfectly shifting us from A through to B through time and practice. When we remove fear, the gloves are off and we become unlimited.